Every nigga is a star. Who will remind you that you're a liar? Every nigga is a star. 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 Every nigga is a star.
During the early mid-90s, at the very beginning into my journey through womanhood, my taste in music was also beginning to blossom, and I was beginning to realize that I was a great singer. My parents kept my sister and I deep in classic R&B, but when we were in musical theater camp at the YMHA, the Young Men's Hebrew Group, or Young Men's Hebrew Association, or our respective dance or gymnastic classes, we were introduced to pop, rock, alternative, and dance. One of the albums that stood out to me in particular was Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette. The melodies, the guitar riffs, the belting, the lyrics, the harmony, the musical theater in me ate that shit up. Mind you, I was 7 at best. So fast forward 25 years later, and I still love Alanis Morissette, and I'll never forgive the government for their lazy response to COVID, because had they not been so busy ruining lives, I would have absolutely been able to see her in concert. But of course, I digress. So a couple of days ago, here I am, going through my iTunes library on a hot and sunny Friday afternoon, preparing for a DJ Live stream set next week, and I stumble upon an oldie but goodie. Dionne Farris's I Know. Now, most of us know her from, remember the song of hers that she had that really stood out in the Black community called Hopeless, and that was on the Love Jones soundtrack. But I Know was from Dionne Farris's debut album, Wild Seed, Wild Flower. I realized that I never quite got into her albums, and I had a few minutes before work, so I started to dive in. 2 songs in, I realized, wait, this is Jagged Little Pill. All this time, I had Black teenage angst within my reach and missed out on it completely. My parents even missed out on it, and they worked very hard to make sure that we had as much representation as possible, but somehow this slipped through their fingers. This album is almost exactly where Jagged Little Pill got the influence from, like almost down to the song. Could this be a case of robbery? I mean, possibly. The albums were released 8 months apart. Both albums were released off of 2 completely different labels. Dionne was signed to Columbia, which at the time was very well known, whereas Alanis was signed to the lesser known label Maverick, which, fun fact, was started by, I think, Madonna and some other man I don't know the name of. This was also before album leaks and the internet. So if there was some sort of robbery or thievery happening, it was strategic and it was intricate. It's also important to note that, unbeknownst to me, Jagged Little Pill was the 3rd album by Alanis Morissette. And before this, the Canadian label that she was signed to at the time pushed her towards like 90s dance pop, the 90s dance pop route, a la Paula Abdul and Mariah Carey. Still, stumbling upon Wild Seed, Wild Flower gives me pause for several reasons. Black people, black women in particular, are constantly being locked out of spaces that we created, or we are constantly being molded or pigeonholed into a very specific stereotype. When in reality, our ability to be multifaceted is exactly what makes us amazing. Alanis had the opportunity to not only try out one genre, but reinvent herself and then master another. And once she was allowed to be who she was, her career legit skyrocketed. And while we love that for her, it definitely stings that Dionne Farris didn't receive nearly as much praise for being who she was. Alas, this is what our lives come with. Nobody asked me, but Dionne Farris needs justice.
Let's give them something to talk about. How about love? Love is good. I can't dig it.
Okay, so let's dive in a little bit deeper. So I did some research on the album of Wild Seed, Wild Flower, but specifically the I Know song. So if you guys haven't heard it, run to iTunes right now. Play it, stream it, And it essentially, but it's one of those, I know what you're doing, baby, and I know what you're doing. Yeah. Really cute song, really upbeat, a lot of good, again, lots of good guitar. Same kind of upbeat pop rock song that you would find in your Dawson's Creeks or your One Tree Hills. That's actually a little bit later. That's a little bit after the fact, but around the same time. Your 90s TV angst shows, the dramas, the felicities. This is the kind of song that you would find in that space. So when we're comparing the two, here's what we're looking at. So as I said before, the albums are 8 months apart, starting with Dionne Farris. So I think she dropped hers in October, whereas Jagged Little Pill was dropped in June. So these facts are all speculation. There are no articles or no comparisons on the internet of Dionne Farris and Alanis Morissette. And honestly, why would there be? Because I don't think anybody at the time was considering one was the same as the other. But for our own purposes, considering the fact that Dionne Farris is not nearly as much as a household name as Alanis Morissette is, I just think it's interesting that, you know, this is something that kind of slipped through a lot of people's fingers. Okay, so the albums were 8 months apart, starting with Dionne Farris. So Dionne Farris dropped her album first. Wild Seed, Wildflower peaked at number 6 on the Billboard charts in 1995 and stayed on there for 2 weeks. Jagged Little Pill, which came out later 1996 in June, peaked at number 1 on the Billboard charts in 1995 and stayed on the charts for 127 weeks. 127 weeks. Do you know how long? 40 weeks is a pregnancy, right? So 127 weeks is double that. That's like, someone do the math. So that someone would probably be me. If 40 weeks is a pregnancy, so that's like 9-10 months, right? So for 80 weeks is now 20 months. So 120 weeks is now close to 3 years, right? That's crazy to be on, to peak at number 1 and your album is literally on the Billboard charts for 3 years straight. That's nuts. That's nuts. That's absolutely unheard of. Okay, moving on. Farris Grammy Award, as far as Grammy Awards are concerned, Dionne Farris was nominated for Best Female Pop Vocalist for the 1996 Grammy nominee. Now, I want to pause here because I know could have been considered pop, considering the fact that it was a poppy song, but it was also a rock song. It also had all the makings of that. It wasn't necessarily electric guitar, but it was definitely more rock than pop, in my opinion. Especially considering 96 was just the emergence of actual pop songs that had a specific poppy sound. So it's great that she got that nomination, but really it had definitely had some rock elements to it. Alanis Morissette that year, not only did she get nominated, but she won for Best Rock Album, Best Rock Song for You Ought to Know, Female Rock Vocalist for You Ought to Know, Album of the fucking Year. Album of the Year. Now, granted, right, if you stayed on the Billboard charts for 127 weeks, you're gonna fucking win Album of the Year. It only makes sense. But the fact that she won all of those things is fascinating. What, girl? That's not a word. Fascinating. But it's also really interesting to see it compared to something else, compared to Dionne Farris's song and album. I also wanted to make sure that I noted that Kiss from a Rose That We Love by Seal also came out this year. And Seal is not American. However, he is a black man. from the UK with a very interesting look and a very interesting voice. And people were really into him, really into his sound. And he also won big that year with Record of the Year for Kiss from the Rose and Song of the Year. And Best Male Pop Vocalist, 1996. So it was interesting because he's the counterpart, in this case, to Dionne Farris. She was nominated for Best Female Pop. He was nominated for Best Male Pop and won number one. We're going to take a quick look to see who won Best Female Pop Vocalist in 1996. And the reason why I bring it up is that somebody like Seal, for example, has a look, has a sound that's different than what was happening in 1996. And in 1996, we have Busta Rhymes, we have Missy Elliott, we have Whitney is still around, Mariah is still around. So for the Black community, you're either a pop diva or you are hip hop queen or princess. This is also Fugees. We're talking Lil' Kim. So, and the same with the male stuff. We're talking Method Man. We're talking some Wu-Tang are still around. We're talking Biggie Smalls. This is like year before he died. We're still talking Snoop Dogg. So there wasn't a lot of room. You were either pop or R&B or you were hip hop. Those were your options. So it's interesting to me that somebody like Seal, who was neither one of those categories, had a beautiful song that was everywhere. It was in the movies. It was in commercials. It was literally everywhere. And it was still able to get some sort of recognition. It was still able to be accepted. And even people in the hip hop community were loving it and singing it and embracing it. And Alanis Morissette, of course, speaks for herself with all of her accolades and how quickly it took off and skyrocketed and how people were, relating to it and how she was in that sound. It's just fascinating to me that those two people were able to really take advantage of that success. But after this, for Dionne Farris, we might have, a few of us who were in a specific niche market might have heard her a couple of times, but the success was nowhere near as big or nowhere near as commercial as either of the two people I just mentioned. And I'm sure that's for an actual reason. Okay, so I'm pulling it up right now. And interestingly enough, here I am saying that, certain people are not getting the recognition that we need, but the person who won the Grammy Award for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance of 1996 was Toni Braxton's Unbreak My Heart. Fascinating. So those are your options. We can be pop divas, or we can be hip hop queens. But if we decide to step outside and be a little bit alternative or be a little bit more, in our case, Afrocentric or a little more down to our roots, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's nice. But we never quite kick the door down and open. So music industry and politics absolutely play a huge part in these numbers. And that's important. That's stuff that we need to talk about. But there's a couple of conversations that we need to have. One of which is definitely the race politics in the music industry. But we also have to talk about society has not known what to do or what to make of the Afrocentric, down-to-earth, somewhat alternative or awkward Black girl. And if you think about it, it kind of shaped where we're at right now. Good and bad. So your Black girl that likes anime, or your Black girl that likes video games, or the Black girl that identifies or explores other subcultures, skateboarding, anything that's necessary, musical theater, drawing, marching band. Those things at the time you were seen as trying to be white or not necessarily connecting with your Black culture in the Black community, at least. And I only know those things because I was one of those girls. I hung out with a lot of those girls. So I know firsthand, you know, oh, you're just trying to be white. You're just trying to sound like this. You're just trying to do that. You don't want, oh, that's crazy that you like anime. Like, what's even happening with you? Like, why do you talk like that? Why do you sound like that? And then on the flip side, though, if you were a Black girl that was into goth and you hung out with a specific kind of white girl, they're looking at you like, but I didn't think Black girls would like stuff like that. So it's like, where do I go to just be normal? Why do I have to pick and choose about the subcultures that I'm into based on my interests, and then somehow it plays down into I'm not Black enough or I'm too Black, which is a weird position to put a lot of us in. But it's definitely a conversation that we are going to be breaking down in just a few short minutes. But I do want to get into, also while we're here, the definition of alternative music. So the definition of alternative music, in specifically music, but this really applies to anything alternative. It's the umbrella term used to describe music, in this case, that is not played on a mainstream radio or consumed by the mainstream audience, or whose music do not fall into any other genre. So Dionne Farris was part-time in the group of Arrested Development. And Arrested Development's whole steez was not doing the norm, stepping outside of the box, talking about social conscious hip hop. They had a message. They had a message about Black America. They had a message about where Black America's going. The whole point was that the Black community was in a state of arrested development. That's where the name came from. And Dionne Farris at the time was dating one of the band members, and she was able to sing on some of their stuff. And the whole idea behind it was getting into our roots, knowing our ancestors, knowing our worth, knowing our history, understanding that we are the people of this country that have built it and that we're not being treated right. So it gave us a different perspective. It gave us a different perspective, which is really important. And it really pushed us, or the intent was for it to push us forward as far as how we felt about ourselves and how we felt about the community around us and how we can change it and what we can build for a better tomorrow. Awesome, right? But, and even at that, Arrested Development won their Grammy. And if you go back and watch the unsung Arrested Development, where they talk about Dionne Farris was not part of that conversation because her and the main leader got into a very big argument. And he saw it fit not to give her the Grammy because of the argument they had had. And that's what led her to go completely solo. But even in a conglomerate like that, they're still being recognized, they're still being played. And that first album, they were experiencing a really high amount of success. Now, do not get me twisted. Dionne Farris experienced success, especially with I Know. People were listening to it. But I'm talking about commercials. I'm talking about television. I'm talking about movies. I'm talking about Grammys. I'm talking about making Dionne Farris a household name. She had those things. There's definitely, if I can remember, a few television shows that I know was in. There's definitely a few movies that I remember, the 90s movies that it was in. But nothing compared to Alanis Morissette, right? Now, if we jump over to Alanis Morissette really quick. Alanis Morissette, I was looking at it today. Before we knew her as Jagged Little Pill, before we knew anything about You Ought to Know, before we even knew who Alanis Morissette was, she had an entire career in her home country, Canada, in the early 90s. I'm not talking like, oh, I had a career and I sang a couple of songs here and there at the lounge club. No, homegirl was singing and dancing in crop tops, full on 90s gear, big curly hair, kissing Matt from Friends on TV. I mean, like in it. And apparently, the songs were very New Kids on the Block, very much very hip hoppy. And I do mean hip hoppy because it wasn't hip hop, and they had the nerve on the internet to call it New Jack Swing, which don't be disrespectful, but it had that little like poppy, dancey, I'm here to dance with high belts at the top. Now, Alanis Morissette is singing her face off in all of these, but it is a completely different shift from what we know Alanis Morissette known now versus what she came from. So I also want to take you down a quick trip, quick detour. If you could turn your pages to later on, maybe 1998 or 1999, you remember a very cute little white princess from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with hot pink hair and a short haircut. And she came out with an album called Can't Take Me Home. And she goes by the name of Pink. Now, Pink was a good time because Pink had a good belt. She could really sing. She could really dance. She was a little thick. And they gave her all of the poppy, hip-hoppy songs that were competitive with the R&B market at the time. And she could handle it. And she had all these really cute things. In the middle of her career, she was like, this just isn't me. And while I love the songs that I'm making, I really, really, really want to, change up and make like alternative rock album. Now, of course, devastated us because our first album was everything I needed. And we'll get back to that later. But she was able to switch up. And if you watch that behind the music, L.A. Reid was like, I guess, girl, but not really. But okay, sure. I'll give you the opportunity to do so. And then she did. And now she's, of course, the Pink that we know today. The same thing happened with Alanis Morissette, where she started off in a genre that actually had nothing to do with her, in my opinion. She was she was cute, and she was, it was quite refreshing to see her literally bust out some good choreography and do it. She's not doing it. She's killing it. But she's singing songs, and she has this image that almost has nothing to do with her, which is fascinating. And when I say nothing to do with, watered down hip hop is not hip hop. It's just pop or dance pop. And people will try to mask it as such because it's marketable and because it's easy. And at the time, Mariah Carey's Someday, that's like the best example I have to compare it to. Someday by Mariah Carey's got to be one of my favorite songs. But it is because it's high energy. The video is so cute. She's in a very simple black off-the-shoulder kind of top, big curly hair. Everyone's doing the Running Man. It's adorable. They did that same thing with Alanis Morissette. And it's not like she did that and she sucked at it. She did that and that album went platinum. And them 3 singles she had, they were on the Canadian charts, and she made good money off of that. But then, of course, had some things happen in her life and she changed it. And I don't know this for sure because I didn't find any specific interviews on Dionne Farris as far as her look or her sound. But I just think that Dionne Farris was allowed to be who she was in the moment. And it was successful in theory. But she didn't get the push. And I wonder why that is. Is it because people are confused by a black girl singing rock and roll music? Are people confused about a black girl that isn't particularly interested in, hip hop or hip hop culture? Is it the fact that she is seen as being or seen as selling out to her subculture because she decides that, this is kind of more in my speed. Black women are multifaceted. That's what we're able to do. Rock music of any kind started with Black people. Alternativeness, the fact that we're different, the fact that we get into goth, the fact that we are into skateboarding and any of those things, a lot of that. There's a lot of punk rock, Black punk rock bands. There's this article that I pulled up on Vox.com, and it says, "Meet the Black Girls of Goth." And it's just a really interesting article about Black girls all over that are a little bit alternative, or they're into goth, or, there was just a few things. But there's a few excerpts on here that was really interesting. And here's one. It says, "Whiteness and thinness and all these other things are valued in the goth community. And that can make you feel very excluded because I had a Black body and skin," she says. "I'm not thin. I'm not a pale white woman. I'm a plus size Black woman, but I thought I'm going to create my own space." And here we are creating our own spaces, creating a space that I feel like we started because, again, Dionne Farris came out first. And it's just interesting to me that we can't get as far even if we created our own space. Even if it means we are doing something completely different. God forbid if a Black woman decides that she wants to share. I remember there was a woman, I think her name is Kima, if I'm not mistaken. And I think she was from Brownstone. And I feel like she broke away or broke up with that group and came out and she was like this big rock star. If I can remember correctly, she was really tall, blonde hair, blonde afro. Let's see, rock singer. Yeah, I'll have to do some more work on that. But she essentially was this really tall, really pretty singer. And I don't remember her single, but I remember her specifically saying that she was into rock. And it was kind of cool. And, at the time when you're in the beginning of puberty and you're starting to figure your own stuff out, you're trying to find a place of which that you fit into. Am I with the musical theater people, specifically a Jewish musical theater camp? I go to a very Black school with that, and all of my friends are Black. So, when I'm bringing them, guys, this is what I learned while I was working on Les Miserables or How to Eat Like a Child, they're looking at me like, girl, what are you even talking about? Or it's like, did you guys listen to that new thing on KTU? And they're like, we don't listen to KTU, girl. Get into what are you talking about? What about the Spice Girls? Girl, we love the Spice Girls, but you're going too far. So, you know what I mean? And it's like, Dionne Farris represented a group of women that didn't necessarily, and I don't even know if she knows this, but she not only did she represent this group of women, but she pioneered a very large group of women that went against what would be considered Black norm. And for that, and for those reasons, it's important that we big her up. Before her was Tracy Chapman. And before Tracy Chapman, or even during Tracy Chapman, was Michelle DeCello. And we can go all the way back to Tina Turner, who made it clear that she was a pop rock singer. And then they opened doors, all of these women opened doors for Mel LaRue and Macy Gray and Desiree. You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser. And then so it just, we are so colorful and we are so able and multifaceted to be anything. We don't have to just be, people who are rapping and cursing. And do not get me twisted. If there's anybody that likes ratchet shit, it's me. If there's anybody that loves a big poppy full belt at the top with a lot of runs. It's me. If it's anyone that appreciates, even a little bit of an acoustic guitar and like a soft sound or a neo soul sound, it's definitely me. But I just think that society is so confused by Black women, and they are so vexed by our very presence and so bothered by the fact that we can do so many things, that the first thing that they want to do is make sure that we only do one thing, and we can only be pit against each other. And that's not true. Black women can do everything. Everything. And so Black men who were outside of the country and had an interesting look, they too were even more appeasing than an alternative Black woman. And I was saying that earlier about Seal, for example, that's more acceptable because, oh, wow, he's so interesting because he's from the UK and it's just so cool. And, oh, I love that song, Kiss from the Rose. It's just so beautiful. It is. Kiss from the Rose is a badass song. That song is beautiful. And he sings the shit out of it. It's beautiful. And Seal's face is fascinating because of the tribal marks on his face, because of the structure of his face. He has beautiful teeth, beautiful gap. He's fascinating to look at. That song is good. I get it. I totally get it. But I just wish that there was a little bit more fire, a little bit more something pushback. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Hopeless. That was on the Love Jones soundtrack. Now, Love Jones has got to be one of the blackest movies I've fucking ever seen in my life for a multitude of reasons. There's spoken word, there's sex, there's love, there's kissing, Nia Long, Lawrence Tate, black icons of the 90s, a nice blunt bob, a oversized button down dress shirt that's buttoned halfway down, and then the rest is midriff, and then put a blazer over top. It's very 90s, very black, very obviously black, unapologetically black. It's a wonderful film and with a wonderful soundtrack. And Dionne Farris got to be a part of that wonderful soundtrack with Hopeless, and Hopeless was so, so cute. And even in that song, it was a R&B-esque song, but it didn't lose any of Dionne Farris's specific flair. It was still very her. It was still, not your typical R&B song, but it was beautiful. And anytime that I hear it, it's almost like, oh my gosh, it takes me back to a place. Now, again, bear with me. Your girl is only 32. So in the 90s, I was less than 10. I think I was 10 in 98, maybe. And, that's the time that Love Jones came out. So I, of course, remember it in passing, and then kind of got into it later on in my teenage years. But I know where it comes from. I remember seeing it. I remember it being on. I remember people listening to it. So it is present in my memory bank. So I know for the people who were teenagers during the 90s or going through puberty in the 90s, it's kind of like, okay, well, that hits us a little bit different than someone who was like still eating a Lunchable. But it's still there. It's still relatable content, especially now that you can go back and listen to it. And so the appreciation is still extremely heavy. And for those reasons, it's important that we make sure that when we talk about pioneers, when we think about where we are right now, we have to include our Black alternative queens. Dionne Farris's album, Wild Sea Wildflower, after I listened to them first two songs, I was like, whoa, wait a second. I stumbled upon some things now. This is a good album. And I'm talking good like Jagged Little Pill good. Really, 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 really good. And it's the same thing about, the things I love about Wild Sea Wildflower are the same things that I love about Jagged Little Pill. There's guitar riffs and there's harmonies and these lyrics and these everything. I could totally see myself, you know, my younger self belting this at the top of my lungs, wanting every part of it, wanting to be at the concert, wanting to know every word, getting it, understanding it. And I just think that, you know, when we try to make somebody do something, it never really works. You have to let things happen organically. And I feel like based on the way she was singing it, based on her look at the time, there was something so organic about Dionne Farris's voice, about her songwriting, about, you know, what she was saying. And we miss that organicness because it's almost like no one wants to hear from an organic Black girl. That's what it is. No one wants to hear from an organic Black girl. For whatever reason, that's like non-relatable. And it's strange. It's weird. I again, your girl loves a ratchet good time. But I wasn't, you know, I didn't have a drug dealer boyfriend at 10 or 12 or 13 for that matter, 14 or 15, maybe 18, I can't remember. But I didn't have this flashy, fantastic hip hop style life. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have a pair of Versace glasses and I wasn't dating Biggie Smalls. I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't, you know, rocking the latest Jordans and out here doing everything. I was talented and I, you know, sometimes read books, but I liked my instrument. I liked to sing. I liked to perform. And so those are I like Disney movies still. And so those are the stuff that made me happy. So, you know, an Alanis Morissette, A Jagged Little Pill, or even now that I had stumbled upon it, a Dionne Farris, Wild Sea Wildflower was much more relatable than the other stuff that I was also getting into at that time. And I think, you know, it's like, oh, you can have an I can absolutely have an appreciation for that now. And I just wonder what happened that people were like, oh yeah, no, they're not going to like that. Because a Black girl doesn't sing about rock music. She doesn't sing about real things. Black women can't make money like that. You have to either be one thing or the other. If you're not Toni Braxton, then you're Missy Elliott. If you're not Missy Elliott, then you're Mariah Carey. If you're not Mariah Carey, then you're Brandy or Monica. And Dionne Farris was none of those things. Now, did she pave the way for some of those people? Absolutely. But I think now we're in a space where people can literally do what they want, which I love. I love that there's so many people that are just making organic music. It doesn't seem like that with what everyone keeps calling like the mumble rap, which also, while we're here, I feel like you guys are holding so much candle to that. The mumble rap isn't meant for you to have this colloquial thought process. It's not meant for it to be this, you know, big sense of truth and philosophy. It is party music. It's party music. It's vibe music. And sometimes there's a message. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it has that, but it doesn't always have to have that. And it's okay if it don't have that. And the rappers that do still have all the things exist and they put projects out. So I don't think there's a reason this is kind of what I'm saying overall. We don't have to just be one thing and enjoy one kind of thing. We can do all things. We can enjoy all things, and it won't lessen who we are as people. If anything, it'll only expand it. You'll get to understand some other people and what that does to them. I mean, it's hard enough trying to find representation as it is. To then have to say, well, this isn't the kind of representation I want, and to have all these like checklists of what art is supposed to be and how it's supposed to feel and what could and can't make money. None of that now in this day and age, none of that shit matters. If you good and you playing good shit and you're writing good shit and you're singing well and people like it, people will buy it. And it doesn't have to be this specific kind of anything. Look at SZA. I love SZA. I think she's beautiful. I think she writes a good song. I think it is a little bit like, daydreamy, very much like a wandering spirit. Do I think she is this bomb Mariah Carey, Beyonce? I'm going to talk about Mariah Carey all day. Beyonce, Whitney Houston, Lady Gaga, monstrous voice? No. But I think it's cute. I think it's nice. Jhené Aiko is another one. Beautiful. When she goes on her, she has that same kind of, free-flowing, whatever comes to mind, I'm going to sing it. And then she has good writing skills. I think that shit works for them. And I don't think that, I think that now we're in a space where they're just dope because that's it. That's what it is that they do. And it's all right if they do something that's different. So Desiree was actually, so going back, I was talking about the women that I think that Dionne Farris pioneered into success. Desiree, that was actually her stage name. She didn't have a last name. And I was singing, hers was I Gotta Be. But the other song she sang was Missing You from the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. And it is one of the most beautiful songs ever. Absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking. And it was not on the radio. It was not necessarily commercial, with the exception of being on the soundtrack and being in the movie, and she got to be in the movie to sing it. But it was incredible. And there's no reason why that shouldn't have been on the radio. There's no reason for it. There's no reason why that song wasn't as big as, I don't know, All By Myself by Celine Dion. Like it had that same kind of ache and pain, and it had the same kind of like grab. And it's just because it's not like the songs that they're making are not marketable. It's not like they're not talented. It's not like people can't relate to it. None of those things. It literally boils down to the fact that Black girls can't sell other music aside from the music that's out right now. So really quick, I'm going to just name a couple of people. But before I do that, I will say that, in my opinion, Dionne Farris now, because now, she still performs, and she still performs at Afropunk, and she performs around and is on tour. But she got the last laugh for a couple of reasons. So at the end of the Unsung of Arrested Development, one of the Arrested Development members mailed her a Grammy that she absolutely deserved for her vocals on Tennessee, which was an Arrested Development single that catapulted them into stardom. Of course, she got the nomination for I Know for Best Female Pop Vocalist. But she is also the mother to young baby Tate. I had no idea that young baby Tate's mom was Dionne Farris. And young baby Tate is exactly what I'm talking about. Even though she's hip hop and she's rapping and she's so cool and so pretty, she's not anyone's typical anything. She has so much flair and style, and it's not one particular look. It's literally big ponytails, pink braids down to the floor. It's everything about what's amazing about being Black. You could literally do everything. There's no limit to how great it can be. She has one picture that she has like 10,000 barrettes coming down on two strands of hair in the front. It's incredible. And a lot of her stuff can be found on the Insecure soundtracks. She has some really great music that's out right now that's amazing. And so it's like Dionne Farris was rock queen. I think one of the rock queens that definitely should have gotten more play. But was also having great R&B songs, also was able to do all of it and really tap into all parts of herself and didn't limit herself to something that was, marketable, was able to just expand as best as she could. And then she gave birth to young baby Tate, who is killing it. So for me, she definitely got the last laugh. Really quick, I would like to name a couple of people that I would like to think in my brain, Dionne Farris absolutely influenced as far as their career is concerned. NDRE, who I have my issues with, but as far as this conversation is concerned, definitely fits here. Macy Gray, Amel LaRue, SZA, Desiree is part of that. Michelle DiCello, we love Michelle DiCello. I don't know if Dionne Farris necessarily influenced her, but Michelle DiCello was definitely one of the pioneers of let's expand. I'm sure, of course, by the time I go to bed, I'll have more ideas about who Dionne Farris led the way for. But it's just something for everybody to think about. That right now we're really, musically, everybody's in a space that we can make whatever we want. It doesn't have to sound a certain way. It doesn't have to be a certain thing. It doesn't, in order for you to be successful, you don't have to have specific stuff. If you want it, get it. Get that. If it means that you want to listen, if you are a person that was just like, yo, honestly, I'm going to kill this shit because I'm going to kill this shit because of how poppin' I am and because of how poppin' I look, go for that shit. Someone will absolutely buy it and eat that shit up because that shit is cool. It has a purpose. Sometimes it can be tainted with, what's happening behind the scenes, but it's not cool. It just might not be for everybody. But if you feel like, yo, honestly, I want to learn how to play the guitar. I want to learn piano. I really am inspired by the Dionne Farrises and the Alanis Morissettes and the Amel LaRues and all the other people I just mentioned. That's kind of my vibe. Get into it. Black women can do everything. And people will continuously tell us that we can't. People will continuously tell us that they can't and then literally do what we're doing and then act like they invented it. I don't know if Alanis Morissette and Dionne Farris ever had that conversation. I don't know if I would be fascinated to hear what Dionne Farris's thoughts were on Jagged Little Pill, because I am not lying when I say that the albums are very similar. And it could have considering the time and considering how people did stuff, it could really go either way. But the point that I'm making here is that Dionne Farris needs to be lifted up, because without her, a lot of the queens that are alternative, albeit alternative hip hop or R&B or alternative rock, would not be where they were if it wasn't for her. And we'll be right back. This episode of Nobody Asked Me But is brought to you by So Music Entertainment. If you're looking for a professional recording studio to record your music projects, podcasts, voiceovers, or whatever your audio needs are, for a reasonable price, look no further. Visit somusicent.com. That's SOHMUSICENT.com for more details. You can also follow them at SoMusicEnt, which is SOHMUSICENT on Twitter and Instagram for a free consultation. And a special shout out to Mr. Ash, the engineer who mixed and edited our podcast today. And you can follow him at Mr. Ash X, which is MRASHX. They have some of the best engineers here at Soul Recording Studios, so don't wait any longer to make your dream project a reality. Visit somusicent.com or call 929-900-6044 now. And let's get back to our show.
boom dynamite. Boom boom dynamite. Our team is boom dynamite. Boom boom dynamite. Our team is tick 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 tick. Hold up, wait a minute, let me put some booty in it. Boom.
All right. So, as you noticed, we are doing a little bit different this week as far as the structure of the show is concerned. And so I'm trying some stuff out. I hope everyone is staying safe. I hope everyone is continuing to social distance, continuing to wash hands, wipe things down, wear their masks, and hold on to your loved ones. And, it's a trying time for everybody. Coping with something as monumental as this is hard. So I just want to encourage everybody to make sure that if you have the access, continue to do therapy. If you don't have your access to therapy, get into your journals. Find a morning motivational something. If it means you go on a yoga or go on a walk or listen to some music, find something to kind of start your day slowly and surely to clear your mind. Be sure to give yourself a nice big hug when you can, when you have the strength. Continue to listen to your bodies. Today, I woke up pretty early, had a nice shower, and I did some research for today's show. And then it was like, I'm tired. And I just laid down and went to bed and started again when I was ready. There is a lot of pressure for people to be creating at this time. And, we got to be on it because if we come out, we don't want to be behind. And then we got to pretty much wait until next year. That's important. But it's also more important, to just navigate your space that fits best for you. And speaking of space, it's important to give people the space that they need. A lot of people aren't able to see their families. A lot of people aren't able to, see the people that they would need to see. So it feels bleak. This is probably a really difficult time to even begin to unpack. I know for me, a lot of the grief that I thought I had overcome comes back in tenfold. I find myself crying for very small things. I had been seeing my mom regularly because we have to take care of our grandfather because he has dementia. So I see her pretty often. But today I gave her like a hug after a really long time. And I just started crying. And so in these times, it's just important to remember that while things could be worse, this is still a rough time for everybody. And so the best thing I can say to you is to just take it a day at a time, breathe, drink your water, and, everyone's cranky. If you're quarantining with other people, everyone's upset. Everyone's trying to get through it. Everyone's anxious to just get on to the next part. And it's just important for us to be there for each other and give each other the space. Okay. So now that we've done that, let's get into our Jet Beauty of the week. All right. So one of my best friends, I have a lot of best friends, but one of my best friends recently started a body lotion line and body scrub line called Shea Butter Bella. So my friend Sybil is experiencing some body conditions that she had to get treated. And I won't put her complete business out on the street because it's completely unfair. But what was kind of happening with what was with her conditioning, Jesus, I can get it together, I promise. With her condition, her skin started to change. And so she was starting to develop a little bit of eczema, and she was trying to purchase other lotions and other body scrubs, and it wasn't really working. It was kind of making it worse, drying it out. making things itch. And so, of course, she decided, as Black women do, to make her own. So she makes these organic body butters and body scrubs. And she literally just launched it like just a couple of days ago. So I'm actually going to be making a purchase later on, and I'll come back and do a review for you guys. But I'm just really excited. She did not pay for this ad. I'm literally just saying it off the gang because that's what we're in right now. And so I'm just excited for her. And so Shy Butterbella, Shy Butterbella can be found on Instagram, and it's Sassy Sib that runs it. And I'll leave that in the description box. And so she is one of our Jet Beauties of the week. Also, last week there was a Versus. So Versus has been like if anyone's been living under a rock, Versus has been the Instagram live where people of our culture have been like going back and forth as far as songs are concerned, and we're going back between like what songs are great and whose song was better. And it's a really cool experience. We've already experienced Teddy Riley and Babyface, which was hilarious for a lot of different reasons. We experienced Jonte and Neo, Lil Jon and T-Pain. But the most recent one, well, actually, by now, you guys have already heard Nelly and Luda, which, although it was a cute effort, for me, left a lot to be desired. But before this was Jill Scott and Erykah Badu. Now, Jill Scott and Erykah Badu also are, I would think, part of the lineage of Dionne Farris, as I was just talking about a little bit earlier. But Jill Scott and Erykah Badu got on and did a versus, and they went back and forth with each other's songs, and it was so warm and fun. And it had such good love. It was good loving. It was just amazing. That the way they were talking to each other, the way they were interacting with each other. Shout out to Ariel Liadi. She and I were watching it together on Zoom. And we were joking about the fact that there was like lots of stories in between. But actually, that history is really important. And they talk to us about where they were in their lives and some of the stuff that they were listening to, and some of the philosophies that they had taken on at that time. And so that's really important. With Babyface and Teddy Riley, it was super funny because like Teddy Riley's video would cut off in the middle, and my internet's trash, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden Babyface is like, that's unfortunate that his internet got turned off, but here's my guitar. I'm going to keep playing my songs. And it's like, all right, this competition is real. But with Jill Scott and Erykah Badu, Erykah's internet fell out, so she got off the live really quick. And Jill Scott was like, well, wait. She was about to play this song. I can play that song for her. And it's like, you see, we can work together. We can help each other out. And it still be all love. And it had so much more of a vibe than it did of an actual competition. And I think that's kind of what we needed. And it was just further proof that, Black women's healing power is high and it's strong. And it was just kind of something I think everybody needed in the moment. So, Jill Scott and Erykah Badu for your verses. It was awesome. Congratulations for Jet Beauty of the Week. Following that verses, Erykah Badu got on her own streaming service, the Badu World Market, which is also a shop. You can buy all types of merch from there, including Badu Pussy incense, which I know I got on the show before and said that I needed. It is at the top of my Christmas list. Thanks in advance. But she had a live stream after party. Now, the Verses lasted a couple of hours, if I'm not mistaken. I think we got done at 10 or 11. So from 11 until 2 or 3, Erykah Badu had an after party, a live streamed after party. And when I tell you, it was an atmosphere, an environment, okay? We're talking drum machines, hats, instruments, instrumentations, songs, creation of songs. It was colors, sets, costume changes. It was incredible. It was nuts, but it was incredible. In between her sets, she would also have only women DJs. And they were spinning, some of them were only spinning on 45s. 45s is a vinyl, which is incredibly, not that it's hard, but it's amazing to watch. She even had a young girl DJ Sophia Rocks, who was killing it. And it was just like music after music after music. Sorry, guys. I was having a bit of, I'm having a bit of heartburn today. DJ Rashida, Natasha Diggs, DJ Sophia Rocks. It was just all these women DJs and young women DJs killing it. And they all gave us something different. They all had these different types of flares. It was just an amazing night. In between that, Badu would have this very hilarious commercial where she had like 12 women packaging the Badu Pussy incense, putting it in boxes, but she had the women dressed in essentially nothing but a face mask. They were topless, and I think they may have had on a panty, but their makeup and hair were all pretty. And she comes in like a pimp, throws her coat on the floor, cursing people out, and it is magical. It was magical. That's the only word I have. And it kept playing throughout the night, like, oh, we're going to come to this commercial and come right back. What am I going to say? Shout out to Luther. Luther was watching it with Cliff and I, and we said, this is the gift that keeps on giving. There is nothing better than this commercial right now. I almost wanted to play in the middle of Netflix or in the middle of regular television. That's how good it was. And it's good because it was wacky. It was wacky. Then there was another point where Erykah was using the drum pad and she was doing a voiceover, a live action voiceover to a Bruce Lee film that was being projected on her back wall. I would have watched 2 hours of that. It was incredible. It was out of this world, literally on another planet. But it was I don't have words. It was absolutely incredible. I'm hoping that if I go there when this is over, and if it's still up there now, I would gladly watch it. Last but not least, we had some really awful, unfortunate passings this week and as of yesterday. Andre Harrell passed. Andre Harrell literally built Uptown Records, which then came Bad Boy and mentored Diddy, and there just would not have been the hip hop soul culture, and 90s hip hop would have been absolutely obsolete and would have been of no recognition if it was not for Andre Harrell. And I am just very saddened to see another strong mogul go on and transition into the next life or transition into heaven. And it's just very sad to see. And so he passed. Also, Betty Wright, who we know as the cleanup woman. She sang the cleanup woman. She sang No Pain and No Gain. She went on to glory. Little Richard. My goodness. Little Richard passed this week as well. This is all during Mother's Day weekend. And I just, I'm over here talking about Dionne Farris and how she pioneered people. Little Richard literally started all of this. Literally at the top, from the top, it's Little Richard. And fun fact about Little Richard, I posted on my IG story. Marsha Ambrosius was telling us about how, everyone got at Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson brought the Beatles catalog because, he had the money to do it. And everybody was mad at Michael because like, aren't you and Paul McCartney like mad cool? And she's like, yeah, they're cool and all, but in that Beatles publishing, there's Little Richard publishing that he never got because this is how it happens with us. And to know that Michael Jackson, because according to Marsha Ambrosius, she said, Michael Jackson bought back the publishing from the Beatles to give Little Richard his things. $40 million worth. It's incredible. It's really unfortunate that it took that for Little Richard to get the recognition that he needed. However, he deserves it. He deserves more than that, honestly. But he deserves it. Elvis, the Beatles, everybody all came from Little Richard. So we want to speak your name and lift you up. Jerry Stiller, our beloved Jerry Stiller, not a jet beauty. However, we have loved him for many years. He's Ben Stiller's dad. He was on King of Queens. He's in Zoolander. You know exactly who. If you Google Jerry Stiller and you see the face, you've seen him in a couple movies. You've seen him in TV shows. Absolutely hilarious. Love his little sarcastic character. And he lived a nice long life, and he's gone on to glory as well. And yesterday, now, you guys know this about me because we don't talk about it a lot, but I love me some Christopher Guest. And Christopher Guest has a very specific ensemble that he used to work with. And one of the people in that ensemble was Fred Willard. Now, Fred Willard has been in the game for a hot minute, okay? You'll remember him from Anchorman. I think it's Anchorman 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken, he's in. And he was like, he's the one that's like, oh, I was just speaking in generalities. He was the grandfather on Modern Family. He was just in so many things, always absolutely hilarious. And I completely forgot that he was the voice of the teacher on the Boondocks. If you have an opportunity, please go to Google, type in teacher on the Boondocks, and it is so cringy, but it is absolutely hilarious because I don't even have the words about how funny it is. It's funny because of the fact that I can almost guarantee he was like, oh my God, do I have to really say these lines? But Aaron McGruder was like, no, you'll be fine because this is exactly the voice that I need. And I literally cowl over in laughter. And so I'm very sad to hear of his passing. But we want to give all of our angels the love and blessings, and for their families, we offer our condolences and our love because it is not easy to lose a loved one, especially during times like these. Also, because it's a couple of days after, I didn't have a second, but we also want to say happy birthday to Stevie Wonder. We love you. And of course, happy birthday to Janet Jackson. And that completes our Jet Beauties of the week. Woo, 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 woo. All right, kids. So we're going to go ahead and go on to our lesson of the day. I don't really have much to say. Again, it's really important that we are giving each other some space. It's also important that we are being kind to one another. But it's also important that we make sure we clean out our cars, because for some reason, every time I get into my truck, if I'm sitting in the passenger seat, I get this very random patch of what seems to be like orange soda or orange drink in my inner thigh. It is literally orange. It is the strangest occurrence. And I'm still trying to find the answers because I don't get it. And I don't know if it's like leaking from someplace. It's so weird. It's always in the same spot every single time. I'm very confused. So if you do nothing else this week, clean out your cars and clean out your space.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that is another episode of Nobody Asked Me But. Oh, before I go, this week, this Thursday, Tributaries is finally back. It's going to be on IG Live and on Mixcloud on Thursday, May 21st. It's Tributaries back on the block. I'm very excited. And I'm excited to play for you guys. I haven't DJed live in a little bit, so I'm excited to do it. And it's going to be an every Thursday occurrence if I can make it, now that we're all home. So by all means, come through. I'd love to see you there. Now that I'm going to be on Mixcloud, Mixcloud's going to be my channel. And so if you're interested, the Mixcloud channel is a subscription for $10 a month. So if you want to come and play back any of the things that I did before, it'll be great. Otherwise, you can find it on IG Live, where it is free and easy and under control. But we always want to encourage you to tip your DJs. And so I will leave my Cash App handle in the description box. And as always, babies, thank you for listening. Thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by. You stay classy, San Diego. Bye.
Thank God this isn't live, huh?